Hey guys, how's it going? My name is John, also known as Gamester81. Thank you for tuning in. This episode, I'll be reviewing the expansion module 2 for the ColecoVision. It includes the steering wheel, gas pedal, and a packing game turbo. This product is very sentimental to me. The ColecoVision is my very first retro console I ever owned as a kid, and the steering wheel, this pack in this expansion module 2 is the very first gaming peripheral I ever owned as a kid. So I used to play this game a lot. It's still a lot of fun to play today. And I want to say a big thank you to my good friend Stu, who actually hooked me up with the steering wheel, the pedal, the game, even complete in box. I'll show you the box here later in the video, and also later in the video I'll show you some gameplay and do a review over Turbo, the game. And the game itself actually pretty revolutionary. It was a game by Sega, one of the very first early racing games, and it's a third person. It's done on a raster graphics or raster monitor. And even a lot of racing games today use a lot of the influences and ideas, concepts from Turbo. So it's safe to say that if Turbo never came out in the arcades, racing games may be different than they are even today. Also, before I dive into the review over the product, and I'm going to show you everything, I want to just briefly talk about Coleco company itself. I believe that this particular system, the ColecoVision, is one of the most underrated retro consoles you'll find. A lot of gamers, they think retro, they think the NES, the Super Nintendo, the Genesis, all great consoles, don't get me wrong, fantastic consoles, but there are a lot of systems that came out prior to the video game crash, including the Atari 2600, the Intellivision, ColecoVision, of course, the Vectrix that came out prior to the NES. There are great consoles that are kind of overlooked and overshadowed by the NES and certainly should be checked out. ColecoVision certainly is no exception to that. In fact, this is probably my favorite console of all time, to be quite honest with you. So what I personally love about the ColecoVision itself is I'm a huge fan of arcades, classic arcades, of course, and a lot of the games that were ported to the ColecoVision are great arcade ports. So one of the packing games, for example, for the ColecoVision is Donkey Kong, and that helped propel a lot of sales for Coleco. So the name Coleco itself actually stands for the Connecticut Leather Company. It was founded in 1932 in Connecticut, of course, and they started actually making leather products. Hence the name. Eventually they evolved making pool stuff in the 60s, 70s. They made Pong clones, and they eventually evolved and got into the toy industry. One of the most famous toy lines is the Cabbage Patch Kids. I'll admit, guys, I actually had a Cabbage Patch Kid growing up. My parents got me one, and I'm not ashamed of it. I think it's a really cool toy line. And also, they also obviously came out with the ColecoVision 1982 to compete with the systems of the day. But even though it was short-lived, over 100 games came out for the console, and the ColecoVision actually is still very alive today with a lot of homebrew games coming out even today. So now what I'm going to do is dive into the Module 2. I'll show you the box. I'll show you kind of how this thing actually hooks up, and we'll take a look at the game. Guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Please leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think about this. Thanks for liking this video, and let's take a closer look. So here's a closer look at the box itself. I love the ColecoVision rainbow logo there, very, very 80s. And what Coleco was really known for was the arcade ports. A lot of times they did like an arcade. They showed the picture of the arcade, which is here, Turbo. On the side, it shows you the steering wheel. Now, this is really ahead of its time. To be honest with you, I don't know if there was a steering wheel that came out prior to this. I don't believe so, unless something came out for the Atari 2600. But no, I don't believe there's one for the Intellivision that came out. And here's just pictures of these kids on the back, super excited. If that doesn't shout out 80s, I certainly don't know what it does. And this is what it comes with. Of course, what it doesn't include the ColecoVision. And this picture is very deceiving because it makes it look like the Module 2 is significantly bigger, or as big as the ColecoVision. It's deceptive in the way they took that picture, but it's about half the size. And it comes with a gas pedal here. Here's a closer look at the foaming that came with it. Now, Coleco loved to do this. They love to emboss their logo. I think that's really cool in the styrofoam. And here is the manual that came with it. Again, this is classic ColecoVision style. Get the blue, shows you how to hook up the manual or the expansion module. And here's a turbo manual as well. And the game looks like so. Here's what the game looks like. Almost like an Atari 2600 cartridge, about the same size. The boards are different size, so you can't plug this into an Atari 2600 and vice versa. They will not play. Unless, of course, you have the expansion module 1. So the way this actually hooks up, it's very, very simple. It actually does require 4C batteries, which is kind of a bummer. If you don't have the batteries, then the steering wheel will not work. But notice here it also has miles per hour, no kilometers per hour. So this is obviously designed in America. At least the guy who put that in there is. And then there's no like center to the steering wheel, so it doesn't go back to center. So still, the controls are pretty good. It doesn't come with a controller, but this is where the controller would actually snap into, and you just basically hook it up rather than this actually connecting to the expansion module port, which I showed you earlier, which actually plugs into the controller port. The second controller would actually plug in obviously to the second controller port. This is actually used for shifting your gears. This is your steering, and this is your gas pedal. So really nice touch, and actually it's got some resistance to it, so not bad. And you can imagine playing this in the early 80s, this is actually way ahead of its time, and it really was made to capture the same feel as playing the arcade game at the time. So now what I'm going to do is show you the gameplay itself. Curious what you guys think about it. It's called Turbo by Sega. Let's take a closer look. So when you turn on the game, you'll notice there's kind of a load time. Even though the system doesn't necessarily require any loading, a lot of classic ColecoVision games did this. I'm not sure if they just want you to see the beautiful rainbow logo. I really don't know. The Turbo has 4 skill sets, 1 being the easiest, 4 being the hardest. And there's 2 gear shifts, and using the controller to do that. Once your gear 1's the slowest, you pop into gear 2 and you can start passing cars. Here's a look at the arcade to show you graphically how it looks and compares. Gameplay wise, it's identical. They really did a good job matching the arcade gameplay for sure. Here's the audio sample as well. So you can see both graphically and audio wise, definitely Turbo is superior in the arcades, to be expected. However, Coleco did a really good job capturing the gameplay experience with not only the gameplay, but of course the controls using the Module 2 with the steering wheel. Really nice work. The goal of Turbo, though, overall is to pass as many cars as possible. You'll see a bar on the very top. Every time you pass a car, one of those squares fills up. If the timer counts down to 0 and that bar is full, you actually can continue. If not, game over. I do also want to mention that in regards to the Module 2, it does require 4 C batteries. I'm not sure how long those batteries last, but it does require 4 C batteries, so it definitely takes a lot of power to boot this thing. You also watch out for ambulances that will randomly show up while you're racing. But I do like the different sceneries. There's a lot of different cutscenes and sceneries in the Turbo. And you can see how this influenced a lot of racing games moving forward. One of my other classic racing games is Pole Position. That's another one I highly recommend by Atari, or Namco rather, as well. Overall, this is a really fun game. It's a definitely must-own for the ColecoVision system. If you guys want to stay in touch, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and my website, Gamester81.com. Also have shirts available at shopshop.com as well. See you guys soon. Take care, and game on.